now we have the full suite of commerce media opportunities. I'm going to welcome up media leaders Ella Sagar, and also can Elton and David please come up, and Ella will make those introductions. Please give them a warm welcome.
And welcome to this 15-minute discussion about the full suite of commerce media opportunities. Delighted to welcome our panel here. So I've got David Fieldhouse, who's UK Head of Commerce at GroupM, and Elton Ollerhead, who's Director of ASOS Media Group. Thanks for joining me both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess my first question is, when I say commerce media opportunities, what do both of you initially think of? David, if you don't mind starting.
Like, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah, okay. If you think about commerce, in a sense, it can touch everything across the media landscape, really. That isn't particularly useful when you're talking to clients and so on. And actually, Steve touched on this on the first couple of slides that he put up. So we tend to think about it around on-site, off-site, social commerce, marketplaces, and in-store. They're the kind of key 5 pillars. I prefer 3, but we got 5 for now. That comes under that commerce banner.
Mm-hmm. And Elton, do you see the same sort of like buckets of opportunities, if that's the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably be thinking about it from a retailer's perspective, but it goes broader these days. Steve mentioned earlier, there's lots of different businesses that are going to become media businesses as well, not just retailers, but yes, it's probably where there is a potential to make a transaction. There's some form of media opportunity around that, whether it's on-site or off-site or in-store, etc.
Mm-hmm. And I think programmatic is something that people have been talking about a bit more, but I suppose all of these different opportunities or formats or different retail media owners, they can be used for different brand objectives. So Elton, I know that we talked a bit about this on our prep call about what kind of objectives can you achieve using commerce media, retail media?
Well, I mean, I suppose the kind of initial draw card is the return on ad spend. That's always that closed loop attribution, to measure how many sales you've got on the back of your campaign, and that's been traditionally the big appeal of retail media or commerce media. And that's, I think, where most of the energy has been focused over the past years, probably decades, but over the past years, especially the last 10 in digital retail media. But, it's very much, there are other objectives, there are other metrics we can measure, and there's a variety of different ways that our brands can do that.
I was quite interested in what Steve was saying earlier about measuring the right thing rather than the easy thing in terms of metrics. Do you think, I know we discussed at the Future Brands, that ROAS can be quite a tricky thing for, depending on the brand, depending on the product to
very much use? So, and also I think it's very much down to retailers and media agencies to make sure that the right metrics are being focused on for the right campaigns or the right objectives. Example is Adidas ran a big campaign last month with ASOS, launching some new trainers, very much about awareness and consideration. There were obviously expectations about driving sale as well, but it's very key to make sure that we're talking to Adidas and other brands about, let's look at what is the awareness, what's the reach of the campaign, how many people are in the consideration phase, and also the different formats of that creative that you're putting out in different ad products, doing different jobs. So it's not fair to measure a campaign that's there to launch a new product necessarily on ROAS. So we have to be quite considered and quite strict in some cases.
Yeah, I think you've got to think about the products as well. A lot of people, when they think about retail media, think about the grocers fundamentally and CPG advertisers. But when you look at consumer electronics, for example, or fashion, and all of these ROAS models are different. A tin of beans is very different to a pair of Adidas trainers. So that's something that is a challenge, but also clients need to consider.
So there is that, I think, the full funnel kind of, and I think again this is what has been mentioned earlier, that it can be used in a kind of full funnel way in different applications.
The full funnel piece is mostly around the data opportunity, particularly in the upper end of the funnel. Where most of the money is right now is towards the bottom of the funnel. That may be different for ASOS because I think of the creative treatments that you can offer and so on. But fundamentally, people are buying biddable media into the grocers, which is where a lot of the spend is happening. You can look at Amazon, obviously, which is 80% of the market, roughly. They have a much more of a full funnel offering, but those guys and Walmart are 5 years ahead of the other retailers.
I was just going to ask, are they the kind of, everyone is sort of following them, watching what they're doing?
Yeah, especially with regards to the upper funnel end of the investment, because that's very much down to data, as Dave mentions, but also it's down to the creative treatments, the copy and creative, and the size of the formats, the types of the formats. So you have to be able to serve big imagery in either video or display formats, targeted to the right kind of broad reach level of audience if you're going to be catering to the top end of the funnel. Some of the kind of leading retail media companies are doing that very well. They've been doing it for a long time. They've invested a lot of money in making sure that they have CTV and online video opportunities. So that's something that a lot of companies are aspiring to. I think it makes more sense for some companies than others. It's probably less likely that you might see some of the grocers doing that. They will have their own treatments for upper funnel, and they'll be kind of pushing into that end of the kind of objective set. But ASOS, for example, we kind of started very differently, almost opposite to most retail companies, where the sponsored ads and the retargeting displays is an easy kind of implementation with a good ad tech partner. But we have always done these big shoots. Brands will come to us, and brands are very concerned about heat. They want their brands to be hot. That's what it's about at ASOS. And then we cater to the 20-something kind of cool, fashion-loving audience, and they're after style. They're after what's trendy. So companies like Adidas or Levi's or Nike's, their kind of heat goes up and down. They don't like to admit it, but they'll come to us and say, we need to do something, and largely that's
cool,
down to
but not in a cool way.
cool, hot, yeah, either one. But you've got product is a key thing. So when you've got a hot product, it's going to sell no matter what. But sometimes that tails off a little bit, and you need to up the marketing ante, and it's very much about how can you visually excite customers, and that's kind of where we step in, and we have these big shoots. We make the brand perhaps look a little edgier than they might be comfortable with if they did it themselves. They allow us to do that because it's a kind of controlled environment. But then it's down to the retail media infrastructure where we can target the right customers doing different jobs within that funnel.
So there is that can do awareness and consideration if that's what you want it to do, but it started out as that kind of driving sales and lower funnel.
Yeah, that's where clients
mostly
start fundamentally.
So they kind of dip their toe into that and then work their way.
Exactly, you have sort of crawl, walk, run. The promise of retailer data is definitely there. It's certainly slightly overblown versus what's actually going on in the market. But it is very interesting for groups like us. And you mentioned CTV. Actually, with the advent of clean rooms, which again Steve mentioned, thanks for that, Steve. With the advent of clean rooms, we can actually use CTV, digital out of home display, and so on, all using this retailer first-party data. Is it there right now? In bits, but it will come together.
So
I think
it's a bit disjointed in you can do some things in some marketplace or media networks and not in others.
Exactly.
And I was going to say that's kind of the fragmentation that's been mentioned. It's a lot of the bigger kind of first movers have made a lot of ground in terms of the infrastructure of the ad products, the targeting and measurement capability regards to the first-party data, and that is, it's a big job. All of the retailers are understanding that the value is in first-party data, but it's how do you actually utilize that? And internally, there's a lot of development, a lot of investment to be made in order to actually build that out so that it's in a usable form.
Yeah, usable, clean,
advertisers.
and the ethics and all of that.
InfoSec teams are involved, clean rooms, legal, the whole 9 yards. So it is challenging.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is just a note of caution that everyone sort of sees first-party retailer data as some sort of silver bullet for everything. We do need to test it more because we need to see that incrementality. Obviously, A/B testing. What happens when we don't use the data versus when we do. Sounds obvious, but there's a lot of heat in this market, and there's sort of an assumption that this is sent from heaven to save all of us, and
especially with the cookieless, deprecation and everything. Oh, this is the answer.
Exactly, and in some cases, it performs really well. We've seen some amazing results, but we've seen some other stuff that's been a bit meh, And then you look at the cost of that data and everything else, so you have to start. Weighing it up.
That is that's another thing that's mentioned is in terms of costs and not and the carbon cost as well of using all of that data as well, not just the kind of financial costs. I was wondering, which was kind of raised earlier about standards in retail media across, and we've kind of touched on this as well. And David, I know you mentioned that you were kind of contributing to the IAB Europe sort of the publication on standards in retail media.
Yeah.
How do you see that kind of factoring into conversations with clients about the retail media opportunity?
Okay, it's a big piece of work. I think, in a sense, clients don't care. They do to a degree, but not as such. They're interested in how their media is performing and sales and all kinds of different things. Whether an ad unit is this size on this retailer and that size on another, they're kind of like, you figure that out. We're not, that's what you need to do. So I don't think clients are driving that particularly. The agency buyers definitely are. There was a survey done by IB Europe. I'm not going to get the exact numbers right. It was something like 79% and 82% of buyers said that measurement and attribution are the two areas that need an awful lot of work. And that's really because the holding companies, we buy at scale, as you know, and it needs to be efficient. And so when you've got different metrics for measurement, and it wasn't just measurement and attribution, by the way, there was creative standards and so on. When that's all different, it means we have to have too many people buying this stuff and managing it. So really, it then goes back to the retailers, and there is talk of a retailer council with IB Europe, for example, because it's up to them to get round a table and actually try and agree something. Now, is Tesco and Sainsbury's going to sit across the table from each other and agree something? Who knows? We hope they would. It's tricky.
Tricky to do.
Yeah, I've been involved in a couple of conversations with ISBA and IAB UK, and also hearing from some US retailers I've spoken to. They're doing similarly in the US. So, and it sounds like the kind of EU is all aligned. So I think all the IAB entities are definitely trying to align on that, and it certainly makes it easier for brands and agencies to compare the performance of their campaigns across media owners or networks. There's definitely a focus on alignment. So in the UK, the ISBA and the IAB, I suppose, meetings that I've been to over the past year have very much been about how do we standardize, and a lot of the retailers you mentioned have seats at that table. So there is definitely an intent to do it. Can they do it? Are they all willing? Because the thing is, everyone's got a slightly different, not everyone, but there are a lot of slightly different definitions of certain metrics, like what is a new customer, what is a lifetime customer, and so on. So those things, even though they are slight nuances, it does make it a little bit difficult.
So there needs to be a bit of movement to be able to, so everyone can make the most of these opportunities. I think we are out of time, but just one quick, it does go quickly. One quick thing, what do you think is the most underappreciated opportunity in commerce media at the moment, or in retail media at the moment, that people aren't paying attention to?
I think it's probably that off-site piece. There's a lot of hot air in that, but actually people getting in and doing it, and social commerce, TikTok Shop and so on, these sorts of things. And I think we'll take a lead from China in terms of when you look at what's going on out there, we can see the same sort of trends coming this way. So.
Elton, briefly.
Yeah, I would just say social media is a huge one, and it's how do you link social activity. So from an ASOS point of view, we have organic social, and we also we use paid social, but we have a very big on-site retail media focus, and we do need to bring those things together because our audience is largely on social. So I would agree, social is linking social up with your retail media campaigns for sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much both, and I'll hand over to Steve to introduce the next panel.
Thank you.